This is episode 4 of Bosley Real Estate Podcast with Tony Baroni, moving from entrepreneurial to purposeful thinking.
You're going to do 250 units at 25,000 conversations. Is that 1 out of 100, essentially?
Yeah,
right?
Correct.
And so if we were to do math, because math is the one thing that doesn't lie, it's just numbers, your ultimate goal is 1,000 units.
Yeah.
Is it as simple to say that you've got to figure out how to make 100,000 conversations a year?
Welcome to the Bosley Real Estate Podcast, your guide in creating wealth, leaving a legacy, and winning in real estate. Now, here is your host, Rick Bosley.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining. This is Rick Bosley. I am your host for the Bosley Real Estate Podcast. That's why I have the name right. Thanks for joining us again. This is episode 4, chapter 3 of the 6 Personal Perspectives with guest Tony Baroni, who's got a large team out of the Tampa Bay, Florida area. And we're going to be talking about E2P. Now, if you don't know, not familiar with this is not ingesting a small green vegetable. This is E2P, moving from entrepreneurial to purposeful thinking and doing. Whether we're in small business or learning an instrument or losing weight or playing a sport, whatever it might be, we can rely on our natural instincts to an extent, our natural talents to an extent. At the end of the day, time on task will always outweigh natural talents. And by doing that time, we want to say with the right models and system. Let's take the game golf. It is a very odd, uncomfortable way to have a perfect, pure golf swing. Instinctively, I don't think if you were to give anybody a golf club who's never seen a golf swing happen, say, here, hit this ball, that they're going to understand how to hold their hands, their grip, their form, and everything. So the entrepreneurial for golf typically is going to be pretty low for everybody. Now, you might be able to hit the ball pretty far, yet it's going to have a wicked slice or wicked hook. You're going to top it half the time. Yet when you apply some models and systems, all of a sudden the ball goes longer, straighter, faster. If you have no idea what I'm talking about in golf, go pick up a golf club. Go do it yourself and then go get lessons. You'll know exactly what I mean when we say moving from E to P. So in your business, are you hitting a ceiling of achievement with your time, with your income, with your spending, with your eating? We're going to talk with Tony about how he's been able to close over 250 units with his team and have a growth mindset. He's got a phenomenal business plan. So take a listen to Tony Baroni. And as always, if you like what you hear, please do us a favor. It really does help us out. If you want to comment, like, share, and subscribe to whatever medium you're talking to here. Without further ado, enough about me. Let's get into the interview with Tony Baroni. Thanks so much.
All right, so I'm here with Tony Baroni, and Tony's got a team out there in the greater Tampa Bay area in Florida, which is just West Coast, Central Florida. Hey, Tony, thanks for jumping on here with me today and talking about the 6 personal perspectives moving from E to P. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on, Rick.
Well, good. It's my pleasure. And Tony, you know, I've known you and we've had some interactions together. I've been the team leader now in the sales. And you've always been someone who I'm not sure I've heard a single bad thing from. It's always in the highest regard. I think you even have a shout out in a place in the new Bold 2.0 curriculum, right? With the promise. Was that you?
That's correct. That's correct.
So we're going to dive into that a little bit just as some extra credit material. As we're going through the 6 perspectives, and here we are on step 3, we had a couple of them for you to choose from. We had the 80-20 principle. We had the E to P. We had removing your limiting beliefs. Tell me about, because you said, you know what, let's do the E to P. Just in a quick summary, what about this chapter made you go, that's the one I want to talk about, we can focus on?
Yeah. I think everyone struggles with it, no matter you're at the very beginning of your career or middle or where anyone is, past me right now that's, Lance Loken, I'm sure even struggles with E2P. So,
right.
I think it's a great topic for any type of person, any type of production. So that got me excited. And it's something I personally had a hard time with at the beginning. So I just really love the E2P concept.
Good. Well, we're going to dive into that a little bit. And for those of you who don't know, Lance Loken is the Keller Williams #1 agent, or at least fighting for that position with a couple other amazingly talented people.
That's right.
I think last year did over 2,200 units with a team of 80-plus people out in Houston, Texas. So
he did okay for himself.
He did okay. Well, and you're right, because when we break down what is moving from E to P, it stands for going from an entrepreneurial mindset, methodology, and habits to a purposeful one. So we're going to tap into how you've done that in some of your career, of where you had to stop being so entrepreneurial and put in some models and some systems. So before we do that, let's talk about kind of your quick CNN version of who you are and why you're relevant and why you're valid to our audience here today.
Sure.
You've got a degree from Illinois State, a science degree with a focus on sociology and psychology. So obviously you knew you were going into real estate when you did sociology.
I totally did. I had no idea actually, but that's what my interests were. So that's what I did.
When I saw that, I'm going, I was almost positive that wasn't your intention. Otherwise you'd have a real estate degree. Yet how applicable is it in your day-to-day? Because at the end of the day, we're in the people business.
Yeah, we absolutely are. So I can say we use it on a daily basis for sure.
Perfect. I love that. And then you moved to Florida from Illinois to get in some warm weather and to come where the hurricanes hit us, and every Labor Day weekend, it seems like.
I know. Yep. I traded the snow for the sunshine and some hurricanes.
Yep. No problem with there. Oh, well, and so in 2004, you left your kind of degree career into the real estate industry, and you tested the waters a little bit as a mortgage broker. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, I thought to myself, if I'm going to learn real estate, let me learn the financial side first. So
okay.
I think in a week I got my mortgage license and started doing mortgages at night while I was working at my logistics consultant career, and just started getting my feet wet that way.
So if we think about the time in versus time out, 4-year degree versus 1 week of a mortgage license, right? Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. And it even sounds then that wasn't an accident. That was intentional and purposeful because you knew you would be in real estate and be a realtor. Was that was?
I did. That was my end goal. Ultimately, we wanted to be able to do loans and then obviously help them as a real estate team as well. So that was the intention.
2005 was the best time to be in real estate, and that's when you switched over to the sales side. And so tell me about that, because initially you started with kind of a smaller brokerage, boutique brokerage.
I did.
As a solo agent?
I did, yeah. 100% type company is where I started. And then essentially we had a small team with 2 partners, and they were invested in some real estate. And, the market, we all know what happened from 06 to 07. If you don't know, it was pretty much a bloodbath here in Florida at the time. So, they got out of the business, and that's really how I found Keller Williams and started on that journey.
Well, and so from 2000, I think it was 7 to 10, 1/3 of realtors went out of business. So it sounds like they were more of the downsides with the shift in market. You then turned to Keller Williams. And in that same time, it's interesting, although NAR dropped by 1/3, that was Keller Williams' greatest growth in terms of percentage.
It was, right? That was crazy.
Well, and I think it's completely relevant with what we're talking about today. Because if you look at the screen, those of you who are watching this on YouTube right now, you can see the screen. If you're not, we'll read it out to you. But essentially, they say there's 5 steps when you want to move from entrepreneurial way of thinking and doing to a purposeful way. And the step 1 is focus, which is really write down your goals, identify what is your 20%. As we talk about that first one, how important is that for you and what you're doing with your team right now?
It's very, we're a very specialized team, and essentially we went out and found people that love to do certain things, and we've tried to put them in their strength zone to be able to do that every day and love their life, love their work life. That's the idea, and that's very specifically what we've done on our team and followed the Keller Williams model essentially. Good.
Well, and the folks in the 20%, when you think about that, your niche, what exactly is the 20% when you're talking with your team? Because you have a team of 15 people. You're tracking to close about 250 units, which is up about 10% year over year. So having that leadership and focus of the goals and keeping everyone in their lane with their 20%, how could you translate that sort of thinking or doing it in terms of the listeners who are listening now, whether they're an agent or a lender or just an investor? How can you kind of instill some of that wisdom there?
Yeah. So are you saying, Rick, for me personally or for just agents?
Both, because you've got to set the goals for your team.
Sure.
And do your 20%. Yet a big part of why your team is thriving is, I imagine, and we'll get to it, your accountability to keep them focused on their goals and their 20%.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. So my role now, is really seeking big opportunities for the team to be able to allow them to continue to grow within our organization. So I spend a lot of time there. We recently expanded over to Orlando area and did that in the last 3 weeks. So I've spent a lot of time there. And then really do my weekly coaching with each person on my team to make sure they're on track to achieve their goals. But I'd say the majority of time is just finding more opportunities for the hungry people on our team that wants to, keep achieving big things. So that's where I spend most of my time and planning for what's next.
Well, and I love that because not every mega agent has the mindset of how can you grow big enough to keep your talent within your world.
Oh, yeah.
Last year, your average agent on your team closed right under 60 units.
That's correct. That's correct. And that's, when you have people like that work with you every day, it creates this, what's the word? Wouldn't say it's pressure as much as it is to just go out and get up and take off and make sure that you're striving to be your best leader.
I imagine, a little bit of pressure, but it's the vacuum. It's not a negative pressure. It's just that.
Yeah, absolutely. A push. I'd say it's a little push every day to make sure we're innovating for them to continue on to grow as big as they want to go in our organization.
Sure. So as you're doing that, it's the asking the options of how can this be done? Are there better ways? How often are you asking those questions to yourself of going, because I imagine when you've been doing this for the last 15 years, you've seen amazing markets, you've seen awful markets, you've seen recovering markets, and you've seen kind of unstable. So how often are you asking yourself, how can this be done better? How can we get to the next level? How can we keep growing? And why do you think that enough has never been enough for you, that you constantly strive for hitting the next level?
Well, I'll start with the last part of that. If you have people that are exceptional in your world, they're going to naturally just want more, and they're going to show up every day at a high level, which makes you want to show up every day at a high level. I've never really understood the concept of seventh level to the degree of I'm starting a whole different business that has nothing to do with my team. And that's no knock on anyone, but that's just me personally.
Sure.
I feel like this is what I've done for 15 years. So why wouldn't I pour more into this and into our business rather than starting a million other things? And I do have intentions to do other things. So don't get me wrong there. I just am purposeful on my time, where I want to spend my time. And I feel like we have a long way to go to be able to continue growing, to get ultimately to 1,000 units is our goal, Rick. And, we're going to be around 250 this year. So I see a lot of opportunity there for us to continue to grow.
We're going to dive into that a little bit. When he mentioned seventh level, he's referencing the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, talking about the organizational chart. And seventh level is when you've got a real estate team that you've hired and leveraged out every aspect of that, including the CEO. So it sounds like you're sitting at level 6 right now, that you're still the CEO of the team, yet you are out of the day-to-day operations with the front end customers and people.
Yeah, I would be quasi 5 to 6. I've done 12 units this year so far, and It was really just overflow. So ultimately, we're bringing on a second listing agent, just started. So I will definitely be facing a little more out of production overall.
So it sounds like one of the drivers for you, obviously you're a driver, because you said team from day one of when you started in the boutique. You were talking about team and you're very purposeful. Yet it sounds like a big motivator for you is you've surrounded yourself with talented people that if you don't grow, they're going to leave you. Yeah,
absolutely. And I obviously had the other side of that when I was on a team. And I always say, really the only reason I left was just the opportunity did not grow anymore, because I really didn't have an intention to do all this. I didn't want to, have a payroll and
right.
Figure all this. This has been the hardest thing to figure out. Wouldn't you agree? This stuff is hard.
Well, because we go out there and we can just work and grind by ourselves, we can stay in our entrepreneurial lane.
Sure.
Our natural instincts and natural abilities, and it's just us. All of this, kind of like when you go from a single guy to a married guy, and then a married guy to having kids, things get a little more complicated.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. I've never thought of it that way, but it is like that. I agree.
And as
Yeah.
soon as you have that, your goals that what you were once doing shifted as well. At least it did for me.
That's true. That's true.
You've got 2 small kiddos, right? How old are your kids?
Yeah, mine are 10 and 7. Actually, he's turning 8 here in a couple days. So
Very fun. Hopefully the power's on for him still, but if not, I guess he'll get some extra candles.
I know, right?
All right, so how has that been? Because let's back up. So you had your first child born in 2009,
Correct.
and you were 3 or 4 years in the business and just launched off to go by yourself. And
Yeah.
so how did that shift from you from kind of being the guy who could just go out there and hustle and grind and network at night to now you've got dad duty and wake up in the middle of the night to ball practices and recitals? How does that shift?
It was tough. It was a tough transition to figure out. Luckily, I did a lot of the grinding before I had kids is how it worked out for me. And my wife, they say passing in the night, right? That's kind of like how it was. We didn't see each other a lot because she was getting her master's and I was, I was bartending, working my consultant job and doing loans on the side prior to jumping in, and then went into real estate. And essentially, we just figured it out. My wife said, she came home one day, Rick, and said, I really want to be home with the kids. I think it was right when, our daughter was born, and I was like, uh-oh, how am I going to figure this out, right? So we put a plan together and just started executing it, chipping away at it.
Good. Well, and so instinctively, our entrepreneurial was, let's get a focus, let's get options. How can this be done? Are there better, different ways that we can do it?
Sure.
I'm gonna skip step 3 here real quick because I want you to dive in a little bit, not only for your personal experience, but those people who are listening right now, maybe they didn't have that head start that you had before life got real.
Yeah.
Maybe life's already real, and now they're trying to simultaneously build their real estate career. It talks about time blocking, scripts, and making sure your systems. Tell me about some of that just quick wisdom you can instill for somebody that says, if you've got life showing up, whether it's an aging parent, whether it's kids, whether it's you're just super dad or super mom doing all the ball practices, maybe you're a single parent, what advice can you give to someone who's also doing that simultaneously with building a big business?
Yeah. So with time blocking specifically, I think, it just keeps evolving. I was talking to my coach the other day, and he said, my real estate coach, and he said, wouldn't it be funny that people, if they were a fly on the wall during this conversation, because we think that we're coming up with all these crazy ideas, but essentially he's just trying to get me a little bit better at my time blocking, right? And we're adjusting that. And I coach 2 baseball teams right now. My daughter has 60 plus soccer games scheduled for this year. Wow. And my intention is really, I'm not going to miss those, any of that, unless I have, out of town conference or something like that. So I think it only allows so much time. And so when you only have so much time, you figure it out. What's the bold law, Rick? You're like Mr. Bold. So the time allotted.
The time allowed.
Absolutely. So it always goes back to that. And you just keep grinding, you keep adjusting, and you figure out how do you make more contacts. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is how many contacts are you making? Are you showing up daily? And then good things happen from there. And then if your conversion's low, you just need to know your scripts a little bit better.
Which is the next one and that's being aware of that conversion. And I didn't prep you for this, so I apologize for putting you on the spot. I imagine someone who's as purposeful as you are, how big is your database? How big does it need to be? What expectation of conversions are you looking to get out of that? And how many contacts, Sure. If I'm on your team, what is the standard that you have for me of contacts per day or per week?
Yeah, so we have about 1,500 past clients. We have 5,000 to 6,000 in our database, and then we really regularly market to about 1,000, because out of the 1,500, 500's moved out of state, so we're not quite as focused on the ones that moved away. Mm-hmm. And the second part of that, what was the second part, Rick?
If I'm on your team.
Oh, contacts per day.
Contacts. And I guess not even per person of the Tony Baroni team. How many contacts are you guys making per week to make sure 250?
Sure. So we initially had the idea of 20 a day, and I think that is a challenge sometimes for salespeople if they're doing it at a high level. Remember, we averaged last year 60 per agent, essentially. So, really 10 a day is what we want to see. Our ISAs are 20 a day, and then we've even implemented some things on the admin side to help them stay focused on customer service and over communication, I should say.
Okay. So how many ISAs do you have?
We have 3.
And how many salespeople do you have?
We have 5.
Okay. And do you have a standard for anybody else per day? Even your admin, 1 or 2 a day, something like that?
Yeah, what we track is essentially the promise, and really, the promise overall for us is online reviews and then referrals. So our admin track that. Okay. And then we have specific touches that we want them to do. Like for our listing manager, just as an example, he calls within 24 hours of getting the file and does an intro call.
So they're making contacts more through your customer service systems.
Absolutely.
That's looking for the next opportunity.
Yeah, not outbound. They're not salespeople, so I don't have them calling. Although we do incentivize them to create business.
I'm doing some quick numbers here. Pardon the pause. I'm looking at, if you've got 3 ISAs, that's 60 a day. If you've got 5 sales, that's 50. So your team's doing 110 a day, 550 a week, 2,200 in a month. And if
Correct.
we take that again to times 12, 20, 22,000, over 25,000 real estate conversations a year.
Yeah, and we also do a weekly scoreboard. So Rick, we get on a conference call. This has really helped us. So maybe it can help you, but with an accountability partner or a coach or someone leading your team, we just jump on a conference call Monday mornings and we announce all our numbers together as a team. Okay. And we go through each category, record it, put it on a Google Doc. And it's worked out really well because, no one wants to say 0 repeatedly week after week.
Right. Well, that goes into the accountability. I'm an analytical person. If you guys have listened to me long enough, you know that. My number immediately went to, you're going to do 250 units at 25,000 conversations. Is that 1 out of 100, essentially?
Yeah,
right?
Correct.
And so if we're to do math, because math is the one thing that doesn't lie, it's just numbers, your ultimate goal is 1,000 units.
Yeah.
Is it as simple to say that you've got to figure out how to make 100,000 conversations a year?
Yeah. That would probably be an easy way to do it.
Right. And then you figure out, all right, well, kind of that first one, how can this be done? How can we go make 100,000? Well, we'll do more per person or your team's going to grow. Yeah. And then who's the next person to grow with that?
Well, and then what if our salespeople, instead of doing 10, they do 20? Because we're all in bold. Most of us are in bold right now. So,
sure.
We are doing 20. And so we know that's possible, right? Because we're doing it. Right. So why don't we just do that all the time, which goes back to E to P, time blocking.
Are there different, better ways to do it, right? It goes back to time blocking. And some more bold laws around that says if it's not in your schedule, it doesn't exist. It's not about selling real estate. It's about following the schedule.
Yes.
So I think that's huge for anyone listening out there that says, can you put on paper what a successful day and what a successful week looks like? Can you create a bunker that actually protects that? If we break down the word time block, it's blocking your time. And I think so few people actually effectively time block, they appointment set.
Yeah.
And so when you look at their week, they might have 7 things on there for a total of 5 hours. I'm like, well, surely you're working more than 5 hours this week. What are you doing for the other 35 or 40?
Right. It's just being purposeful. And it's been tough, the E to P part. I've transitioned from taking 100 listings a year for I don't know how many years now. And, my schedule, when I came out of that, I essentially I wasn't getting a lot done is what it came down to. So, it's even myself now, it's like, okay, what can I continually improve and be more purposeful? So the E to P for me is really, the E I think stands for easy, and then the P stands for painful, because the E is just naturally who you are and who you show up to be every day. And then the purposeful, it's really the strategy on changing the way you think or changing how you do things. So
Right.
it's not easy for anyone.
Well, and that's the other E, right? It's not what comes easy to you. It's out of your comfort zone. Yet when we leave our comfort zone, that's when we experience the growth.
Right.
And I think what's important, because as you said it, you and your lead admin likely have two very different comfort zones and two very different pain zones. And it's not always doing the opposite, because your greatest salesperson, if their uncomfort zone is organization, you're going, cool, don't do that. That's part of your 80%.
Yes.
Let's go get purposeful on and being even your conversion rates, your efficiency, right?
Mm-hmm.
So identifying how do we get better in our 20%, identifying what that 20% is. Let's talk about accountability. You've mentioned you have a coach. How long have you had a coach for?
7 years.
So when you got that's about half of your career. So for the first half of your career, granted you're on a team for some of it, so I imagine you had
I had a coach then too. So I mean, essentially almost I'd say since I joined Keller Williams, I've been in coaching programs. I've had 2 amazing mentors, and then I eventually got a MAPS mastery coach in 2013. So what's that, 6 or 7 years now?
Sure. So help me with your opinion of the mindset, because when we look at, and we'll look at Keller Williams specifically, 160, 150,000 agents, yet 4,000 are in mastery MAPS coaching.
Yeah.
It's a small number. So what about your mindset, or do you think anybody who's not getting a coach right now, yet they're also hitting that ceiling? Talk to them a bit.
I think when people are, this is how I look at it. Okay. So a MAPS coach, if you break down the numbers of the investment of what it is, essentially in my market, it's 2 transactions. And believe me, I'm not the guy that's like, it's just one more transaction, just buy it. I'm not. But at the same time, if you're a MAPS coach, just point blank, if you can't get 2 more transactions out of a MAPS coach and beyond that, then you're not coachable, and then you shouldn't have a coach. So my question to always people that ask me is, are you coachable? Because at the end of the day, if you want to expedite your success, it's very easy to go after and get in a relationship with someone that's coaching at a high level and will be able to see the blind spots that you just can't see. You just can't see them because you're living in your day-to-day operations. And there's no way we'd be where we are without having a MAPS coach guide us through the way. And I mean, my first coach call, Rick, he's like, tell me about your schedule. I went through, I'm like, I'm not kidding. I think I had 3 listing appointments, I had a staging appointment, I had a photography session, and I had a listing to input the first day. And he goes, Tony, there's this thing called the life worth living. That's my concern for you. And I'm like, okay, well, tell me more about that. And he basically is like, okay, here's your homework. Hire a photographer. And I was like, but I'm a great photographer. Because we go there, right? We argue and he's like, I'm telling you, you're going to have to get a photographer at the volume you're doing. It just doesn't make sense. And so that was my first thing. The next thing, I got a staging consultant, and just over time, you just keep doing it. And don't get me wrong, sometimes it takes a month to get it off your list or your mindset. Like, talk to me more about that. I'm just not feeling why I need to do that. And then eventually you show up and you just give way to whatever the coach thinks, because then at the end of the day, they're going to be able to get you where you need to go if you listen.
Right. Well, and what I love, and it sounds like the same experience for you, typically it's nothing mind-blowing that the coach is telling us. It's the stuff that we are just right in front of our face, we're choosing to ignore, and we need someone else to point it out. And so as people are listening, you said if you're not coachable, don't get a coach. How would one know if they're coachable or not? What are some characteristics that might?
Yeah, I think, I think if you, like, I have a sports background growing up. So, I think that plays a lot of factor for myself that, I was on teams. I really don't know another way. I always had a coach helping me out with different sports. So if you were on a sports team, that might be an easy way. Thinking back when your coach gave you advice, were you willing to take it? Do you take things personal or not? Or do you think they're just trying to help? But you have to go into it with an open mind. It's like a Tony Robbins event. Some people say, hey, just to go in with an open mind. And there's people that leave after the first day, and there's people it changes their life. And it comes down to, do you have an open mind or not around it? So,
right.
That would be where I'd start with that.
Well, and so that's going to go back up, and I skipped it initially, but looking for models to follow. A coach is one of those models of showing some mentors who have done it before. Gary Keller always tells us, if you're at a stage in your life, your career, your health, your spirit, your marriage, whatever, you're missing a who. And oftentimes the default that people think is, I need an assistant who. I need someone to help me with my stuff. And before that, typically, it's I need a mentor, I need a guide, I need a coach. And that's the missing who. Now, tell me about some of the trainings or the conversations or mentors that you've had personally in your life that you can go back and kind of give us your highlight reel of going, this was a game changer. This person's been a game changer. This class has been a game changer.
I think of some past teachers. Think of my mom, being a great mentor to me. Parents, obviously, both parents. And then I even think back to some early coaches that I had, teaching me you got to show up. You've got to get a little bit better every day. You got to practice so you're ready for games, and perfect practices make perfect games. And a lot of people I admire were my mentors in real estate were a guy named Larry Bartow, so I always want to acknowledge him, and a buyer specialist named Debbie Ramiro. And they really taught me the whole business and really, guided me on expediting my experience. I was on a team for 4 years, Rick, and I probably got 15 years of experience. So I think sometimes people shortchange themselves by their mindset. And even when I was on the team, people were like, why would you be giving your commission to them? And blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you guys have no clue like what my end game is here. And it wasn't to leave the team. It was, I just want to learn as much as possible from the best in the business. And
right.
So that's how I looked at it.
Surrounding yourself from the best in the very beginning. And that becomes, if you're taking notes on this, it's write that down of who are you hanging out with, who you're surrounding yourself with, who are the people that you would like to be one day, and do they know that, and are they helping you, and are they leading you? I asked you, Tony, to jump on. You said, no problem, let's pick a date. And it wasn't an issue. And you're a busy guy with a busy life and a busy weekend. And so I appreciate you jumping on here.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I didn't hesitate to do that.
No, it's been awesome. And I know we teased at the beginning the promise, and you're highlighted in bold for that. Give us a quick nugget of what exactly is the promise and how has it impacted your business?
Yeah, Rick. So essentially, Mike Hicks is an agent out in Idaho Falls, and he's in a small area. And he was on stage 2-3 years ago and was talking about something he called the promise. And essentially, he was going to give them a great experience, and in doing so, he was going to ask for a referral from them. So I took that when I was sitting there taking notes. I'm like, wow, we do that, yet we do it for online reviews. And then I said, well, our referrals are down. And that was when I was less and less in production. So then I said, well, I think that's on me. I'm not training my salespeople to get referrals, because I know they do a great job because they get 5-star reviews all the time. And so we basically just made the decision of, hey, let's adopt this, but have our own twist on it. So we did online reviews and referrals with the promise, and we actually kept the name, and we did get Mike's permission to do so. And it just has that emotional connection. We were trying to come up with something else, but I just think it works really well. And essentially, we just tell clients up front, hey, Rick, here's our goal. We're going to give you the best real estate experience you could ever imagine receiving. That's our goal. If you're good with that, that's the goal. And how would you be happy with that if we did that, Rick?
That would be great. That's about it.
Okay. And that's what everyone's going to say that, right? So then we say, okay, great. So we ask for 2 different things, Rick, when we deliver that promise to you. Can I share with you what those are?
Sure.
Okay. So the first thing is we want feedback. We wouldn't know how we did unless we got feedback. And the way we get feedback is online reviews. So at the end of this, we want to know how we did. and we'd love for you to do online reviews on 7 key websites. Would you be willing to do that for us?
Right off the bat, I'm going 7's a lot, yet I'm probably going to nod out of being compliant and agreeable at the time.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. And I think some people are like, I don't know, I'm not, normally they'll always do 1, and then 7, they just can copy and paste the rest if they decide, right?
What are those 7 you do, just to real quick?
Yeah, we do the first is Google My Business, second is Zillow, third is Realtor.com, 4 is Angie's List, 5 is Facebook. I always forget Facebook. I don't know why. And
I get it.
Yeah, they're this tiny company. And how many is that?
That is 5. Do you have Yelp?
Yelp. Yep. Yelp's 1. And then the other one, I'm trying to think which one it was. We just added it recently. I'm sorry. I just can't think off the top of my head.
Probably another social media. I imagine LinkedIn will have some recommendations or aspects.
But yeah, so we do that. And then the second part of that, Rick, is we say, okay, great. So we appreciate your effort to do that. So the second thing is we really want to compel you to give us a referral sometime between today and closing. And how do you feel about that?
Well, I'll do my best if I know anyone, but I don't really know anyone right now.
Understood. Well, here's the thing, Rick. Have you ever heard of the law of attraction?
Sure.
So basically what will happen now, and I guarantee this will happen to you, Rick, sometime between today and closing, you are going to meet someone with real estate needs. And when you do, I just would like you to get permission for me to contact them if you feel comfortable with that. Would you be comfortable with that?
If I feel good about what you're doing, I will.
Awesome. And that's what everyone tells me, Rick. So I realize none of this happens without us giving the best experience that you could ever imagine receiving, right? So thanks so much for agreeing to do those 2 things for us. And can I tell you what the promise is not?
Sure.
Okay, so the promise is not that everything's going to be rainbows and unicorns. There's going to be challenges along the way. There's going to be human beings involved that actually things will go sideways. Yeah, there's going to be humans. And essentially, we'll have the solutions when that happens, and we'll get you through it. And we're going to hold your hand through that process. But it doesn't mean that nothing will go wrong. Okay, so I just want to make sure you understand that.
Right. Well, now the follow, and I love that. And let's say you just took a listing, average days in the market 60 days, and then we're going to close. So for the next 3 to 4 months is kind of when they've got that window, right? Now, what is happening with your admin that they're checking in on this promise? Or do they have weekly check-ins on it? Tell me about that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's weekly because we don't want to, put it down people's throat. But we literally, we all talk about it in different facets, and we all have a different spin on it. Our ISAs are going to say, when the listing agent comes out, they're going to talk to you about the promise, and I just want to give you a heads up. And that's what our team's all about. And then the listing agent will say what they say. And then the listing manager is going to say, my goal is to get you listed and have you thrilled at the end of this to get your house under contract before it goes over to our closing coordinator. And our closing coordinator is going to be, hey, here's what's next. Here's what's next. Here's what's next. Hey, by the way, do you think you're going to have a chance to do those reviews for us after closing? By the way, I don't see it in my file. Have you given us a referral yet? I just wanted to check in. And we're just doing reminders, and
sure.
And we'll even do an extension at closing. And because, we are going to bring it up at closing, and we do track it to know if we got a referral and we got a review at our weekly team meeting. We track all of that.
What percentage of your clients are doing that and fulfilling their end of the promise?
Yeah, so 70% right now are doing reviews, and that's on one website at least.
Okay.
And then referrals, we're about 30% right now.
What is that up since before you started?
About 10% currently.
Okay, so it's pretty massive. Well,
Yep.
What I love is I'm talking to you and I as a realtors, yet, doctors could do this, lawyers could do this, mortgage officers, LOs, right? If I've got a new LO and he says, Rick, here's my promise. Can I get this back from you? right?
Yeah.
If they do a great job, I'm going to almost feel compelled to do that, to hold my end of the bargain.
Yeah. And I've done training with other business owners as well. So
good.
It's a concept that works for everyone. I scratch your back, you scratch mine, and it's not complicated.
It's the win-win or no deal. I love it.
Yeah, well, it really is.
Bold conversation of people grow into the conversations you create around them.
Yep.
Right.
That's right.
If you want a database of referrers, you're not going to get it unless you create that conversation around them.
Well, and here's what I've learned, Rick, is people, especially, if they're willing to do a review for you, they are willing to give you a referral. The problem is we haven't trained them to do so. Mm-hmm. And people, I can't tell you how many referrals I've received of, hey, I gave your name out. So it's really getting that permission to call is everything. It's everything. And for the online reviews, it's follow-up from 2 weeks to 30 days after closing is when they're going to essentially do it, because they're busy and they got a lot going on when they're moving and stuff. So you just got to remind them and they'll do it.
Well, it sounds like that's the heartbeat of your business, and that compound interest as you go from 250 to 300 to 500, and 30% of them give you repeat referral business. That's going to get you that geometric progression up to that 1,000 units. Good stuff.
Exactly.
Well, hey, man, I appreciate you so much. I've got like 4 pages of notes here for myself. So you're strengthening me as an agent here in Orlando. And now you've got some great partners. If anybody has any real estate needs, specifically in the Tampa area, Tony, how can they connect with you?
Yeah, they can reach out to us. It's 813-909-3444, or our website's tonybaroni.com, Tony, B as in boy, ARONI. And look me up on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Tony Baroni team or Tony Baroni, and love to connect with you guys.
Right on. Well, I appreciate it much, and best of luck as you finish the 2019 and on your pursuit to 1,000 units. It'll be fun to watch you grow.
Rick, thanks a million, man. I always admire everything you're doing on your end, so keep up the good work.
Right on. Thanks, son. Take care.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and that concludes today's interview. Thanks so much for Tony. If you guys have any needs or resources for some real estate in the Tampa, now you know who to call. He's a phenomenal guy, and just overall from father to husband to entrepreneurial to businessman to realtor. So I appreciate him being on. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe to us, like us, comment, share, give us a 5-star review. It really does help. I am an Orlando-based realtor, and I've got connections and network all over the world. So depending where you're at, if you need anything real estate related, even if it's going to be refinancing or you need a roofer, anything involved with your house, please don't hesitate to call. I would love to be able to get that exposure and make sure this podcast is offering enough value for you to stay connected. If you like what you heard today, join us next week for episode 5, chapter 4, the 6 perspectives, which is making learning a foundational piece of your business plan. Talking with Jessica Starr, a top realtor from the Connecticut area, and how she consistently has a strong foundation of growth and classes and learning, because frankly, the market's always changing. We are always changing, so learning never stops. Join us next week for that episode. Until then, have a productive week. Let us know how we can help you, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
You've just listened to the Bosley Real Estate Podcast, where we create wealth, leave legacies, and win in real estate. Follow and subscribe on social media at tagline Bosley Rick. Thank you for listening.